Hey, most contractors think the reason they can't get funding is because banks don't like construction businesses. But the truth is, a lot of business owners were never taught how to build business credit the right way. And if you're using your personal credit to run your business, you might be putting everything you've built at risk.
No more burnout, no more fear. We'll build it strong, make it clear. Not just a grind, but a dream that's true. Building a business that works for you.
Quick side note, before we get into this conversation, because a lot of what Paul and I are going to talk about today comes down to being capital ready as a business. And one piece of that puzzle is making sure that the right customers can actually find you. So if you want to check where you stand online, grab my AI Visibility Scorecard. The link is in the show notes. It's free, and it'll show you exactly what's working and what's not. All right. Today's conversation is one I've been really looking forward to. My guest today is Paul Childers, the founder of Blue Sky Biz Solutions. And he works with business owners all over the country, helping them understand something most of us were never taught when we started our companies: how to actually build business credit the right way. Now, what really caught my attention about Paul is that he's working with the exact same people I care about helping: contractors, service businesses, that blue-collar worker, blue-collar entrepreneur, people who are incredible at what they do, but nobody ever handed them a manual on the financial side of running their business. And Paul's mission is helping those owners become what lenders call capital ready, meaning your business is structured in the way that actually gives you access to funding, credit, and growth opportunities without putting your personal finances at risk and putting them on the line. And something else I thought was really interesting, Paul and I actually share a little bit of the same roots. We both started out kind of in the automotive dealership world, which is a place where you learn very quickly how money, financing, and business really work. So I have a feeling this conversation is going to be a really good one. Paul also hosts a podcast called Roll Up and Roll Out. You got to go check it out, where he talks with entrepreneurs and business leaders about growth, leadership, and real world side of building a business. Paul, welcome to the Builder's Edge. I'm really glad you're here.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you having me on.
Great. Okay, Paul, before we get into all the strategy and all this financial stuff, I am curious of how you did end up getting into this business credit side of the world.
Sure. No, it was a big part of that, right? So, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Automotive was a gateway for a lot of different things in my life once I got into it, because of just the culture of car dealerships in general, and the moving and grooving, and always pushing to be better. It was in automotive. Yeah, no, it's a great, I love automotive.
Kind of like real estate.
But it was a lot of the things that I see in automotive when I was financing deals and we were doing fleet financing that kind of started this whole path that I was on. I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but it was a big foundation piece, because I always am curious, like, why do certain people qualify for things and others don't, when all things otherwise look equal? Right? I mean, that's
point.
At the end of the day, you could look at two deals, they look the same, and their approvals are significantly different. And I just always go, why, what happened, what is going on underneath? So, right. So that was the start of all of this. Fast forward, I went to a different company. I was a sales director for a large ag and tire company, did kind of the corporate stuff with them, didn't like it, left that space and said, I'm tired of building something for others. Let's build for myself. And I kind of just laid into what I already knew, which was this business credit side, financing vehicles. And so I started as a broker, where I was actually a direct lender. I was associated with another lender at the time. And that was fine for a year and a half. One thing that really led me to pull away from that and start this iteration of Blue Sky, where I cut ties with lending almost completely, was I realized that there's a lot of, I'm not going to say necessary or intentional predatory practices that were happening in the broker and lending space. But I do believe that there was a lot of misinformation that's being given out to owners in that space to keep people in cycles and be commission checks for these brokers and some of these independent lenders. And that didn't sit well with me, knowing the financial opportunities that exist when you do finance stuff through dealerships and manufacturers directly, and knowing that you could do that without having to personally guarantee everything. So those culminations and that background is really what led me to build this iteration of Blue Sky in October of 2024, when I decided to sever the hand that was feeding me and become less transactional and more relationship, long-term, focused more as a partner.
Oh, wonderful. Great business model. Okay, a lot of contractors listening probably use their personal credit to run their business, and they don't even realize that there's another way. What's the difference between personal credit and business credit, and why does that separation matter so much?
Yep, 100%. The easiest way to describe the difference is literally one sits wholly on your business, right? Your EIN is, by the Constitution, considered a legal individual on its own, which is why we have the EINs, right? Which allots for that business to be capable of carrying a lot of the same or similar financial products and programs that we do as people. So the biggest thing is your business is 100% separated once you sign up that LLC, go to an S Corp or a C Corp, and you have that EIN given. Now you have a separate entity, right? Personal credit, we just kind of get that as we are born, we grow, we get old, we get a score, we can abuse it, right? Business credit operates a little bit differently, where if you're not intentional about building it, you probably don't have it. You might have it some by accident, but you don't have as much as what you think you do, because it does take running expenses through the appropriate channels, does take having your business set up properly to receive credit report that really builds it the right way. So that's the real separation. Is personal credit. Yeah, you can be intentional about it, but you have it or you have it, right? One way or another.
Right.
Business, if you're not intentional about it, chances are you don't have it, and you don't even know if your business is showing up anywhere. And that's really, it's all about intentionality.
Yeah. Now you say set your business up right. I don't want to, anybody to think, that this is, an extensive process. It's just a minor process. You just have to make it look like a real business. Yes, and appear like a real business, like your business address and your business phone number or website, just some things like that. Am I correct?
For sure. Right locations as well. And we can go into that, a little more detail if we want to. Otherwise, it's just look professional, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you want to show up like that? Let's do it the right way.
Great. Okay, this EIN, most business owners know that they have one for tax purposes, and that's what we think we're given it. Actually, we're kind of told that you need this tax number. And then we kind of think that that's what it's there, but they don't really realize it functions like a social security number, like you said, for their business. Can you explain how that works? You said a little bit about how it's an entity by itself, but explain a little bit more there.
Yeah, so your EIN is a unique code, very similar to the social security number that we get assigned at birth, right? It is the way that the government can identify our business separate from anybody else. It is what bears the industry codes. It bears the history of your company. And it's what allows creditors to determine if they can extend credit to the business itself or not, right? And that piece right there, that last piece that I said, is really the significant thing that I think a lot of owners just don't know about or aren't even aware of, because you can go and talk to a bunch of local banks, and a lot, like I would say probably 95% of them are all just going to kind of look at you like a deer in the headlights and be like, wait, no, like it's all going to be off of you. And that's just inherently wrong. And it's not that
flat out lie.
Well, yeah. And it's not. And but the crazy part to me is a lot of them, just the bankers themselves don't know.
That's true.
Because they've never been taught. Unless their bank is specifically set up to deal in business credit, most lenders are clueless to what actually exists out there. And I've talked to VPs of fairly large regional banks, and they look at me like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah. So if
So
they, bankers don't know, then, we shouldn't feel guilty that we don't know about it either. But we're learning about it today and we need to wisen up, right? Okay.
100%.
So at what point should a business owner start building this credit tied to their EIN instead of just relying on the personal?
For sure. So there's a lot of variations and paths that you can deal down with this. I particularly I'm a huge believer of don't put yourself in debt until you have established revenue, right? At least to a point where you're doing 15 to 20K a month and you have money left over in the banks. You can cash flow that on your own. Don't put yourself into unnecessary debt too early because it can put you backwards. The
Yeah.
flip side of this is, and I've helped people with this before who had a plan, they had a roadmap, they were going to do acquisitions under an LLC. We bought and set up an LLC early on. They started building their credit before they ever had any revenue going through it and bought a business to roll into it, right? So you can build credit for your company as soon as your LLC is like conceived by literally just running expenses through the right vendors to it. Now, that's not going to give you access to lines of credit and the SBA and all that kind of stuff, but it is going to give you access to capacity and money that you wouldn't have had otherwise that you can use to kind of get by and build a history so that when you do get to those key marks, which are usually like the 12 to 18 to 24 months, you have history. You can actually go and start financing vehicles, equipment, et cetera, through the business alone. So you can, as soon as you start putting expenses through your company, you can start building business credit if you run them through them the right way.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about the steps of this process. If you were going to break it down in 4 easy steps and simplify it for somebody listening today, and you said, here are the 4 steps to building business credit tied to your EIN, what would those 4 steps look like?
Yep. Entity type. So make sure that you're at least an LLC, right? A formal LLC with an EIN.
Okay.
Don't worry about the S Corp or C Corp stuff. That comes later.
Okay.
But make sure you're at least at a minimum an LLC or up, right? It can't be a full sole proprietorship or everything will be tied to you.
Okay.
Second piece of that is exactly what we were talking about before is the business details. So when you register your business, make sure that you're registering it accurately. It should match what's on the Secretary of State, what's going to be filed on your taxes. It should match the data that goes into the banks when you apply for credit cards. It should all be the same information. And it should also match what's on your Google business profile as well, because we want accuracy. And I know there's some practices where we like to put a Google business profile in a different zip code for certain reasons. But if our business address doesn't match, we're going to get flagged for fraud when we do that, right?
Okay.
That may not cause declines. So don't get, too nervous, but it's something to be mindful of as you're building this. Email addresses, domains, buy a legit domain name. Use that domain name to build an email address with. So you're not running around with, we'll just say bluesky at gmail.yahoo. We're running around with sales at blueskybizsolutions.com. Right? Those little details end up actually mattering a ton. And then are you working out of your home? If you are, that's fine. Are you using a registered agent to hide your address? If you are, that's okay. Don't go through a PO box though, because that looks like fraud. Yeah. Actually use a physical address if you can, even if it's your home. That's better than using a PO box. It's also better than using some of the remote office stuff that's out there. Although some are viable, you just have to do a little research. So that is the single most important step, what I just described of all of this. Because if none of that is in place and right, we won't get approved for anything else. Apply for a Duns & Bradstreet number. You can do it for free. You don't have to pay them anything. You go to dnb.com and apply. Super easy. It takes 3 to 30 days to get the approval.
And this is your reporting platform, like Experian, TransUnion, and all the rest.
It's one of the main bureaus. You have Duns & Bradstreet, yes. Experian, and Equifax. So those are all 3 for business. So
yes.
But Duns is where your EIN's your social security number. Duns & Bradstreet is like your API key to connect into things, right? They're a data source provider. So that's an important piece as well. The first 3 things that I would apply for as a business, are you a contractor? Are you putting fuel in your truck? Go apply for a fuel card. WEX, Gulf Coast, Fuelman, A to B, a local fuel service station that you use for everything. Get a fuel card and it will start building your business credit up there, right?
Yeah.
If you have good personal credit, still. And you can apply for a better business credit card that won't report to your personal, but still needs a PG, like a Chase Inc., Amex Plum, Capital One. You have to be very, very careful with, but they do have them. US Bank also has some good cards. Those will also report as long as they're not charge cards. They need to be revolving cards that can carry balances, not due at the end of each month, right?
Okay.
Those will build business credit. So those are the first two easiest ways. And then as a contractor, who are your suppliers? Do you go through some of the major suppliers? Do you ever stop at Home Depots or Lowe's? Go and apply and get accounts with them and get set up. Really is the fastest way to start building your credit and get a profile going.
Okay. That's wonderful. You even made fewer steps than that. Gave us some good stuff. Okay. Yeah. What is one of those steps that you think most business owners skip that ends up biting them in the butt?
Step 2, the details. And I don't know that it's necessarily that they skip intentionally. I think it's just that, especially for businesses that have been around for longer than 2 or 3 years that have grown, I had my home address where I started out of. Then I moved to my next address, and then we found a bigger location, and then we moved over here.
Yeah.
But nowhere along the way did we ever go back and clean up all of the data out on us and get it all pointing into the right direction again. We just left it scattered. And so it's all fragmented, and now it's hard for the bureaus to determine who to point to or how to report to, and it causes issues.
Yes. And I'd like to mention that in a marketing aspect. So you're talking about in the finance, and that is why when businesses are not active on their websites and their social media and Google Business Profile, when they're not constantly posting, Google thinks they're no longer in business. They think they've left that location. They're not doing any business. So that's why that's important too. So I can see why it would look like you were a fraud or closed or not even in business for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are people out there listening right now thinking, I wish I had known this years ago. Paul, if someone's listening today, they realize they've been doing things the hard way and they'd like some guidance on building this business credit the right way, how can they get in contact with you and learn more about working with you?
Yep. 2 easiest ways are go to our website, blueskybizsolutions.com. And we have a form fill there where you can reach out, and it will either book a time with me or you can just schedule to have us reach out, and we'll have a conversation and book it on your time. Otherwise, on my Facebook page, just is Paul Childers. Just follow my personal page. I post a lot of stuff there. You can send me a DM and we'll get the conversation started. I mean, those are the 2 fastest ways to get a hold of us.
Wonderful. Okay, let's talk about contractors specifically. Why do you think so many construction and service businesses get denied when they're trying to get funding?
So I'm going to segment this into 2 different sections because it really is how banks look at industries and businesses. So the first one is going to be general contractors, right? And what I mean by a general contractor, regardless of the space you're in, is do you subcontract out over 50% of all of your business every month? If you do, you are a very different categorically functioning business, and you have to be aware of how banks are looking at you because you're high risk, because you aren't actually the one that's in full control from start to end of your project. Even though you may think you are, you still rely on your subs to do the right work.
Okay.
Because of the subs, it increases your risk category to lenders. And because of the subcontracting aspect of your business, it also makes a lot of banks, I would probably say somewhere around like 75% of all the banks that are out there, not really have an appetite for your industry type because there is a history of defaulting, high risk. You have to make sure your subcontractors get paid first. You have to make sure if you're a prime, which means you're carrying the main contracts with bigger projects, you got to make sure that those people all get paid first. And so there's a lot of money grabbing that's happening before a bank ever knows if they're going to get their stuff paid out if stuff goes sideways. So you just inherently increase your risk category that way. So your financials have to be really clear. Your business model has to be really clear. And you have to go to a lender that actually understands your type of business, right? Those things are the most important part of it because you can get good loans if you match all that stuff up, right? General contractors also don't carry a lot of overhead a lot of times, right? So they don't have a lot of vehicles. They don't have a lot of equipment. So they don't have a lot of assets, which also causes risk to be there because there's no security. So the flip side of that, when we're talking about guys that are running HVAC, electrical, plumbing, landscaping, construction companies that are doing all in-house, fix and flip real estate investors that do everything in-house, right? Now we have things that allow us to control that risk category because we have W-2 employees, we have the vehicles, we are doing it from start to finish. We are the main ones that are in contact with the client and the customer. So we are the ones that are receiving the money directly. It's not going out to third parties. Why I see a lot of those industries getting denied is a lot of times it's poor financial keeping, right? Our financials, our books, our balance sheets, all that stuff are very messy. The other part is sometimes we land in a category for an industry code that we probably don't fit into because we went way too specific with the industry when we could have been broader, right? And the other part is a lot of these guys have everything tied into their personal because they've all just built a relationship with the local bank. And so that kind of mess ends up creating a ball that makes it very difficult for larger lenders to want to come in and unwind. So those are kind of, a culmination of all that. Obviously, I'll throw in the easy one is you probably don't have a good commercial credit or business credit score as well, but that is just a part of the larger equation.
Yeah. So, and something that I have learned with, trying to get, I've done some flipping, I grew up building houses. My family has built over 300 houses and we worked on thousands more. When I had no idea, even when I went to, actually build my own personal home, I had no idea that every single bank is different in the way that they accept and handle applications and pieces that, they accept and don't. So, I mean, you may get 9 no's till you get the yes. It's a crazy process, for sure.
Absolutely.
Don't just take that first no and say, oh, they hate me. They hate me because I'm a contractor.
Yeah.
They just don't know your business. You're very specific. Okay, a lot of contractors end up taking merchant cash advances and high interest short-term loans because they feel like they don't have any other option. What's really happening there?
So I could talk about this in depth for hours because it's a variety of things. A lot of it is they don't have enough insight and really understand where cash flow is actually going. A lot of it is tied to they grew too fast. Sometimes the recommendation I make to them is we don't really need to go get into more debt. We need to slow down and we need to go backwards a little bit and we need to get your books cleaned up. We need to get your numbers cleaned up. We need to get your pricing cleaned up, your cost segregation, your costs figured out. We need to increase your profit and we need to up your sales. You need to work with I see this a lot and you see this in the space in marketing. We need to go find your different marketing company because you're spending a ton of money and nothing's actually coming in and you're not closing deals. So you feel like cash flow is bad. So you're going to go get a loan to slap a Band-Aid on something that's going to continue to be a problem. And now you're just going to compound your issue, right? So a lot of it is just lack of clarity and understanding of what is actually causing me to feel this way and be this way, right? The other part is it's fast and easy. I mean, every single CRM that's out there, QuickBooks, it's all online. You see advertisements for these companies all day, every day. Skip the banks. They're dumb. They're slow. They're stupid. We'll get you money in 24 to 48 hours. Same rate as the banks. Bullcrap. It's all a lie, right? And when you get into them and you actually start using them, they sell you even more lies. Hey, if you use this, the interest rates are going to go down over time. If you use this loan, it will position you to be able to qualify for a longer term loan. And so it's that I'm going to use the word because it's preying on the lack of information and knowledge and knowing that these owners most of the time just want to see money in their account. They don't really care where it comes from because this is a very prominent mindset in the blue collar space versus a lot of others. I'm just going to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may and figure it out. That's true. Yeah. So a big mistake that they make is taking like their business bank account and they intermingle. And a lot of times they just have to clean that. That's a mess that sometimes has to clean up. And yes, there is a whole horrible, businesses out there kind of sleazy one that I don't like is that marketers who, claim all this quick stuff and these quick fixes, organic and growing doesn't happen overnight. We'd love for it to, but it doesn't. What these companies that charge these little teeny, low amounts too, they'll set up your marketing business, your business marketing side. They'll set up all your social and everything out there, and then they hold it your digital hostage. So when they're not doing their job and you're ready to go find somebody else, you find out that all of that content that is out there that have been posted and built and put up, that you have no rights to, and that's branded, even though it has your branding on it. And I find that very sleazy as well. So slow down just a little bit and dig deeper and, get into that. Pay attention to those little things. So what is a warning sign that business owner might be walking into a bad loan? How do they know that?
Ask the question.
Having the whole education in their head.
It really is a simple thing of literally trust your gut, right? I mean, does it feel like it's a good loan? Does it sound like it's a good loan? If your dad or your grandpa was looking over your shoulder when you were going to go sign this, would they be like, yeah, that makes sense? Or like, what are you doing? Right?
Okay.
Ask details. A viable and a honest lender is going to be transparent with you. They will break down the terms for you. Ask them, hey, this says weekly payments, but I don't see interest rates on here. How much interest am I actually paying on this loan? What is the true cost of this loan? Do not let them just get off the hook by simply telling you, well, it's not an actual interest rate. It's just off of your receivables. I don't care. What is the actual cost of this money? And if they don't freely answer that, which they should, right? You probably just need to walk away from that loan in general. And really, if you don't understand the terms and the loan, and you are in any way feeling in any form doubt about it, don't sign the contract.
Yeah. You're
better off never getting into those than you are suffering to figure out how to get through to make increase sales, right? To cover your payroll.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, it's a lot easier to go find additional sales to get and cover your payroll than it is to go find additional sales every single week and every single month to cover the amount of money that you're actually losing to those types of loans.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a bad thing that we kind of got into our mindset, and this is a key factor of how I think the automobile industry got completely psychotic and out of hand, was people only really cared what their monthly payment was. They no longer looked at the cost of vehicles. Used to be, you looked at the cost of vehicles. Then after a while, they just went in and they're like, well, what's my payment going to be? So they started extending the years just to get the payment to what people needed, and started selling really high dollar cars. So they really, come back to bite them in the butt. Okay, you use the phrase capital ready. What does that actually mean for a business owner?
Yeah. Capital ready is kind of a term that I like to use and is used in some different variations of the lending space. But the way I look at it is, do you know how your business shows up, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that is the single most important thing that owners, I think, leave just kind of up to a whim of not knowing how their business shows up. If I walked in today to present my business to a lender, if I changed chairs with that lender, would I be interested in giving me a loan? Think of it that way.
Would I be impressed at all, right?
Not at all, right?
Yeah.
And then what separates you from every other person that walks through that door, right? When we work with clients, we like to put together an entire package. Let's put a biography together. Let's put a short business plan together. Let's share who you are, what you are, how you operate. Let's make sure your financials are clean and easy. And then let's make sure the right credit profiles are cleaned up and ready to go. If we're going for an SBA, we better make sure that your personal credit is in order. Business credit is less important on SBA loans, right? But if we're going to go and apply for equipment and vehicles and lines of credit and buildings, et cetera, with your business, then we better make sure that your business shows up well and is represented very clearly on its own. So the biggest mistake I see with owners is they always like to blame the banks, when in reality, they need to turn that mirror and look straight at themselves and go, it's my fault. I'm not qualifying for the type of loan that I should be qualifying for because I have no clue what's actually going on in my business.
Wow. Good point. Good point. Okay. Once a business owner starts building business credit, how does that change loan terms and credit limits?
So the cool part about business credit is it opens a lot of doors that if you didn't have it, you otherwise would have never known existed, right? So business credit allows us to talk to different lenders. It allows us to get approached differently when we go into dealerships, as long as you talk to the right people, because not everybody in the car dealership is smart. I'm not going to say that in a bad way, but
Like everywhere else.
it opens doors up that get you into conversations that you never would have had. And the cool part about it is once you start having those conversations and you have the scores and you have the history and we've cleaned up all the other things, we see lower interest rates fairly significantly by usually on average like 4 to 6 points lower than what you
Wow, that's
qualify for.
significant.
We're seeing longer terms. We're seeing better rates, right? We're seeing a lot more approvals without having to provide personal information at all. And so it really all it does, it just solidifies everything that you've been doing and thinking. Like I know a lot of you guys out there are like, man, there's got to be something different. Well, there is. You just have never had the key to unlock the door to get into those rooms.
So let's talk about you and I working with collar workers. They're incredible at their job. They're incredible technicians, very talented, but nobody ever taught them the financial strategy side of running this business. Why do you think this gap exists?
I don't know that it's necessarily intentional that the gap exists, right? Like when you,
Right.
I'm the same way because I was not great at school and school doesn't really teach us this stuff either, but this is very prominent in this space. And honestly, it's prominent in white collar doctors, all that stuff too. So it's not, I don't think just an exclusive blue collar thing, but it's literally just the fact that we are good at what we are good at. And 99% of the time, we do not vary outside of what we're comfortable with. So we don't ever really delve into, hey,
That's a good point.
well, why I need to figure out these finances. But what do? We go trust our CPAs and our lawyers and our CFOs to give us that right information, or we trust the bankers to give us that right information, but we don't have enough of a knowledge point to really know if they're telling us the truth or not. I love CPAs. I work with all of them. I work with bankers. But we have to remember, what are they incentivized by? And what do they know? Because I guarantee you that their knowledge is also limited to what their exposure has been as well.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, that gap, we are handed down sometimes our trade through family members. And, we're taught that trade, but there's a gap there for the financial and business side of it for sure.
For sure.
Okay. If somebody's listening today and they realize I've been running my business completely on personal credit, what's the first step to fixing that today?
I think the first step is really to step back and actually, I'm sure it will make some of these guys mad because I know they don't like this, but step back and literally start writing down everything that you believe has your personal credit involved and then building a checklist on that, right? If you finance through a local bank, how did they ask you to finance? How did you sign that contract? Call them and ask them, hey, like, how is this stuff showing up? If you want to really tell if it shows up on your personal, log on to Experian.com and pay the fee and pull your personal credit report and look, does it show up on there? If it does, then we probably need to do something about it, right? If it doesn't, but you've been going and applying at the local bank where all of your other loans are through, but you don't see it on your personal credit report, but the bank still tells you that your debt to income is still too low and you can't get approved for a home, they're tying all of it together regardless and lumping you and your business together. And that's another indicator that we need to separate and get out of there.
Oh, okay. Okay. It says it might not be easy, especially if you've done it for years, but it is doable.
100%.
Okay. You might love this one because of the automotive background. Paul, you and I both started in this automotive dealership environment. I started out of high school. I applied for a job at a dealership, big dealership. It had a couple blocks in our city. They sold everything from Chevrolet and Mercedes, everything. But anyway, they were hiring new salespeople, and I walk in, just graduated from high school. I walk into this room, and there must have been almost 75 to 100 people in this huge, I guess, storage room or something where it's at this dealership. And I thought, oh, crud. There are going to be people in here with more experience than me, right? So what they did is they gave everybody, I think this is a pretty cool thing, so I'll share it real quick here, but they gave everybody a little piece of paper that had a paragraph written on it, and they gave us another paper to put our name and contact information, and they told us to copy that paragraph on the paper. And then they said, you just put it in the bin and leave. So we all did that. I get called back to another interview, and there's down to probably 10, maybe 15 of us in the room. And they told us that we were back for an actual real interview based on our handwriting, that they did a handwriting analysis on us, and that I was hired on, and I ended up making it just graduated high school. So this teaches you a lot about financing and credit, and it teaches you that really fast. How did that experience shape your work today?
Yeah. So kind of like what I hinted at the start of this, I sold cars, and then I also was in the finance box. I worked my way up to used car, new car, general sales manager, dealership. And so, for where it shaped me was in the finance box when I was putting deals together, and we would all, we'd get business deals. And one of the business deals I did opened up this entire new portal to me. And it was like, oh, they've been approved for a commercial line through GM. And I'm like, well, I've never seen this before. What is this? Right. So I get on the phone with my rep, start asking questions, and got this guy done. He got approved for $250,000 commercial line through GM Financial, blah, 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 right? Ran off.
Oh, okay.
Couple days later, a business that was very, very similar in size and structure came in, and I was doing that deal as well. Well, and the commercial portal never came back up again, and it was done all like on his personal. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, why did these guys get this option for this commercial loan, and these other guys didn't even get given that option? It just got sent right to personal. And so I just started asking questions. I started delving deeper, started talking to the reps at the dealerships, at the GM Financial, Ally, and started learning that, oh, well, it was because this client's commercial credit score was high enough that when we just put it in and the tax ID popped up, that we didn't even need to look at any of their personal stuff, right? So then that makes me go, well, how is the owner supposed to know that this even exists, especially something that really is in their control? So
yeah,
that's how that tied together.
That's interesting. I'm curious if the owner that came in and got the 250 line of credit, did he purposefully set it up that way, or was he just happened to, fall into that key, or I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I know now that it's not always, you don't always have to be purposeful of it. If you buy enough vehicles in a year with one of the dealerships or the manufacturers and are in good standing, they will sometimes just offer you commercial accounts regardless of your business credit score off of relationships. But it is controllable 100%.
Wow. Lots of information. Good stuff. This has been such a valuable conversation. And honestly, I think for a lot of people listening, this is one of those moments where you realize I've been working hard, but I have not been building my business the right way behind the scenes. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about getting more jobs. It's about building businesses that actually support you and gives you the options to grow. And what you should share with us today about separating your personal credit and building business credit and becoming capital ready, that's the kind of stuff that actually can completely change the trajectory of some businesses. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about growth, more jobs, better clients, bigger opportunities, just remember all of that starts with having the right foundation in place. Part of that is your financial structure, and part of that is making sure the right people can actually find your business in the first place. So if you haven't already, go grab that AI visibility scorecard and in the show notes, and it'll show you exactly how visible your business is online and where you can improve to start attracting better opportunities. Paul, I really appreciate you being here and breaking this down for us in a way that actually makes some real sense for business owners.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. So if you're listening, make sure you connect with Paul and check out what he's doing, especially if you're serious about getting your business financially dialed in and growing. And if you've got value from this episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with another business owner who needs to hear it. This is the Builder's Edge, where we're building smarter businesses, not just bigger ones. I'll see you next time on the Builder's Edge.